Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Wow. Woohoo. Woohoo. Krishna. Wow. Wow. Krishna. Krishna. So, John came today to do the semi-annual diagnostic of the AC unit, and something needed to be replaced. There's always something needs to be replaced. But wow, this is the second time John's been here. He's pretty amazing. He's from Bangladesh. But he's been converted to Christianity. And he's pretty amazing. He doesn't speak very good English. It's really hard to understand him. His English is really hard to understand him. But it's his energy. You know, if you've got a high power Bangladesh person who's attached to the Shaktivesh avatar Jesus, is pretty powerful. He's already coming from a spiritual culture, and so his attraction for Jesus is the Shaktivesh avatar. Like somebody may be attracted to Lord Ramachandra, or someone may be attracted to Buddha. You know, like if they're from India and they're attracted to these different incarnations of the Lord, it's different than if somebody who's has no culture at all, is something like an animal, is converted and now believes in God. It's actually a little different because he's coming from a spiritual culture. Bangladesh used to be part of India up until recently. And so his attraction is, he already knows this God, but he's attracted to this particular avatar, Shaktivesh avatar. So he doesn't seem to have a problem with Krishna at all. Oh, Krishna, very nice. But I'm worshiping Jesus. He's an incarnation. It's really amazing when he's here. It's like his energy, I mean, he glows. You look at him, I had to get my sunglasses. He glows. So I couldn't give him a book. He's already familiar with Indian culture. That's where he came from. And he's chosen that incarnation of God, the Shaktivesh avatar Jesus. Hare Krishna. Just amazing. So I couldn't give him a book, and I didn't have any sweets on hand. I just finished the last of them the other day. I need to make some cookies or something. But I did have a lot of persimmons. I went with a couple other of the ladies to a You Pick Persimmons place, and he came back with, you know, a lot of persimmons. So I asked, I said, you like persimmons? He goes, oh, yes, persimmons. So I got him a little bag of persimmons, and he was really happy. He told me how he prepares them. He says, you remove the skin and just use the inside part, and you put it in the blender, you add a little ice, and he said, oh, it makes it very nice. Very nice. Probably something like an icy or something. I know when I just plop the whole persimmon in, skin and all, and it makes like a pudding. It's like, the old Dairy Queen Dairy Whips, I mean, it really does that. And if you chill it a little bit, it's like, it makes a pudding. It's really interesting fruit, persimmon. So it was, that's what went on here for the last hour or so. I'm still buzzing. I mean, his energy was so high, devotional high. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. There were devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who were attached to Lord Ramachandra and could not, would not, and did not want to change their worship of Lord to be Krishna. They wanted to worship Lord Ramachandra. And they were associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So looking at this man, John, he's a devotee of Krishna, but he's attached to Jesus. It's a really interesting situation. High as a kite. Woo! Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hey, Lance. Yeah. I had a house visit from John to look at the AC unit, and he's a Christian in the spirit, and I mean in the spirit. He's from Bangladesh, and he's chosen the Shaktivesh avatar, Jesus, to worship. So he doesn't have any problem with Krishna. He's okay. He's Krishna, very nice. But I'm attracted to Jesus. He's a Shaktivesh avatar. It's pretty high. It was really high in here. Krishna. Because he comes from a spiritual culture, and people have different incarnations they're attracted to, Ramachandra and Nishinga. So he likes Jesus. Hare Krishna. What is going on? Krishna. So he's from Bangladesh, and he's aware of all the problems there. He probably still has family there. Hare Krishna. So he's going to read Prabhupada, Volume 1. Yeah, awesome, for sure. I gave him a big bag of persimmons. He was happy. I couldn't give him a book because he doesn't speak English very well, so I know he doesn't read English. He could hardly speak English at all. So, with a Hari Bol and a Hare Krishna and a bag of persimmons, off he went. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So this is chapter 6, entitled An Unknown Friend. So Bhaktisiddhanta's left. His disciples are all fighting who gets what room. They sold the printing press to pay for the court fees. And Abai is going out of business. He was trying to crank up his business so he could make a lot of money to try and help. But now he's having business problems. And he had a dream. Bhaktisiddhanta said, take sannyas. And he's kind of, it really shook him. But he's still trying on that program he'd been doing all those years of making a lot of money and supporting. But what's there to support? It's all in tatters. Bhaktisiddhanta's organization is falling apart. So why work so hard to make money? And then he's thinking, well, my family members give me no support at all. Why am I working so hard to support them? They give me no support at all. And my spiritual master's institution is in crumbles. So why am I working so hard? What's with the money thing? So he had a servant named Gauranga, who he's still trying to make his business work in Lucknow. And he tells Gauranga to come and help him, because Gauranga's just been taking care of the family members. And Abhai's paying them. Prabhupada's paying him. He's a paid servant. He's a Vaishnava, but he's working as a servant. So part of a letter to him, he says to Gauranga, I've started my work here in a fairly big scale. You have seen that with your own eyes. So if there is no income, who will spend for a court interrogation? Oh, he was being sued for something. Why he was being sued? Prabhupada was being sued. Somebody was suing him. He had enemies in his business. It's cutthroat, when you do business. Everything's on my head. The brother and sons are just eating and sleeping like a bunch of females and breaking the axe on my head. See how you've seen the family members. They're in the house like a bunch of women. They're not doing anything to help. He named his business Abhay Charan Day and Son, but the son never came and helped. So this is what's going on. Everything's falling apart. Listen, Krishna favors some and he takes everything away. So chapter 6, An Unknown Friend. And there's a quote here from Bhaktivedanta Puri. Hare Krishna. Let the sharp moralists accuse me of being illusioned. I do not mind. Experts in Vedic activities may slander me as being misled. Friends and relatives may call me frustrated. My brothers may call me a fool. The wealthy Mammonites may point out that I am mad. And the learned philosophers may assert I'm way too proud, much too proud. Still, my mind does not budge an inch from the determination to serve the lotus feet of Govinda, though I am unable to do so. Bhaktivedanta Puri. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. He's the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. And it said that he appeared, the first one to appear with this mood of conjugal love and the mood of separation. Up to that point, the highest mood of love was parental, that was manifest on the planet. Madhavendra Puri came, he was the first one. And then it said that the whole movement is coming from that, the seed of Madhavendra Puri's devotion. Okay, here we go. Aside from his difficulties with business and family, Abhay had to survive the cataclysms of Indian independence and partition. This is when they put Bangladesh, after World War II, they divided India. He was not active politically, but was one of hundreds of millions affected by the violent dawn of Indian independence. While Gandhi and the Hindu-dominated Congress were demanding a united free India, the Muslim League, led by M.A. Jinnah, called for partition in their own Muslim nation, Pakistan. The conflict raged Wait a minute, where is Bangladesh? Is Bangladesh in Pakistan? What's Bangladesh? Excuse me. I can't let anything go by. I gotta take a look. Google knows everything. What? Bangladesh is a country. Oh, it's its own country. It's in Bengal. Okay. And it borders on India. After the decline of the British Bengal presidency, the borders of modern Bangladesh were established in 1947 at the time of the partition of India, when the region became East Pakistan as a part of the newly formed Dominion of Pakistan. Okay, so it was partitioned off from India as part of Pakistan, but later the rise of a pro-democracy movement thrived in Bengal, and liberation war, there was a war, and resulted in the emergence of Bangladesh as a sovereign and independent nation in 1971. Okay, so it was partitioned off at that time, after the war, and then they broke away in 1971 to make their own country, Bangladesh. Okay. So the Hindu-dominated Congress was demanding a united free India, and the Muslim League, led by M.A. Jinnah, called for partition and their own Muslim nation, Pakistan. The conflict raged. In August 1946, the outgoing British government invited Jawaharlal Nehru, Congress Party president, to form an interim national government, but the League objected. The Muslim cause would be denied. Jinnah had already declared August 16 Direct Action Day, which amounted to little in most parts of India, but in Calcutta erupted in more Hindu-Muslim rioting. This is all because of the British. The 5 days of violence, 4,000 died and thousands were wounded. In the months that followed, Hindu-Muslim rioting repeatedly flared up throughout India, and it's still going on. Early in 1947, when the new Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, met with Indian political leaders to plan transfer of power, riots again broke out as Muslims demanded Pakistan. At the threat of civil war, Congress finally agreed on partition. And on July 18th, the Indian Independence Bill passed without dissent. 1 month later, India and Pakistan emerged as independent nations, with Jawaharlal Nehru as India's first Prime Minister. Partition tore India, leaving 5 million Sikhs and Hindus in Pakistan, and as many Muslims in India. And the Great Migration began, refugees fleeing from Pakistan to India and from India to Pakistan clashed with each other and even with their own countrymen of the opposing faith. And the violence that erupted claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Srila Prabhupada, he said that if a world war does, it will, probably. He said a world war could be avoided if there's Krishna consciousness, but if there is another world war where all the major countries take sides against each other, it will start between India and Pakistan. He said like that. So here's a quote from Prabhupada. He says, Prabhupada, our independence movement was started by Mahatma Gandhiji for uniting all the different sections of people. But actually, the result was that instead of being united, India was partitioned. And the partition became so poisonous that formerly there was only sporadic Hindu-Muslim riots in some places, but now there was organized fighting between Pakistan and Hindustan. So actually, we were not being united, we were being separated. The Hindus would go to the mosque of the Muslim and break it. And Muslim would go to the temples of the Hindus and break the idols. And they will think, we have finished the Hindus' God. Just like the Hindus also think, we have broken their God. They're all ignorant. God cannot be Hindu. God cannot be Muslim. God cannot be Christian. God is God. Prabhupada continues, we have seen in 1947 Hindu-Muslim rioting and fighting. One party was Hindu, the other party was Muslim. They fought, and so many died. And after death there was no distinction who was Hindu and who was Muslim. The municipal men gathered them together in piles to throw them somewhere. They fought, and in Bug Bazaar there were heaps of dead bodies. And when it's a dead body, nobody can understand who was Hindu and who was Muslim. Simply, it was to be cleared from the road. So how timely this is. I mean, this is what's going on right now. It's been going on 1947. How many years is that? "75 years they've been doing this?" Abai was not expecting Indian independence to bring any real solutions. Unless the leaders were God conscious, what change would there be? Now he saw that instead of suffering at the hand of a foreign rule, the people were free to suffer under their own countrymen. In fact, the fighting and suffering had increased. Throughout the years of India's political struggles, Abai had never lost his desire to propagate Krishna consciousness. He had seen how promises of unity and independence had brought mostly higher prices and civic mismanagement. He had seen neighborhoods where Indians had lived peacefully for generations erupt in hatred and rioting in the wake of British and Indian diplomatic manipulations. It was as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had described it. When Prabhupada first met Bhaktisiddhanta, when Prabhupada was a college student, and he was a supporter of Gandhi's political movement, Indian independence, Swaraj, whatever it was. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, we cannot wait for Indian politics. This is way too important to wait for Indian politics. And now Prabhupada is seeing the truth of that. It was as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had described it. So there's a little section here from somewhere. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life, and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects, cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path, fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruit of labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. I remember when Barack Obama was successfully elected as the president, they were saying he was some kind of messiah. I mean, it was like incredible, the kinds of praises and glories that were. He was the chosen one. And everybody got behind him. Why? Because he was black. Not because he wasn't his body, he was a spirit soul. No, because he had a black body. Yay! It's just opposite of white, that's all. Krishna. And now we have a female vice president. Woo-hoo! Krishna Chaitanya. So, is it improved anything? No. It's probably gotten worse. Hare Krishna. Okay, continuing on. The Vaishnava prays to his spiritual master, quote, who has opened my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge, end quote. And he feels obliged to help humanity by bearing the same torch. As a representative of the eternal Vaishnava Parampara, Abai wanted to shed the light of transcendental knowledge onto the field of the current crisis. That had been the purpose of Back to Godhead, although since 1944 he had been unable to print the magazine. So it's 1947, so for 3 years. He printed 2 issues. But even without the means to publish, Abai continued writing. His most ambitious project was Gita-Upanishad, his translation and commentary of Bhagavad-Gita. Gandhi and others often spoke of the wisdom of Bhagavad-Gita. Indians never forgot their Gita, but most proponents did not teach it as Krishna had taught it. They would not recognize Lord Krishna, the speaker of their Gita, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but would extract his words as slogans to bolster their own philosophies. Whether political leaders, religious leaders, or scholars, they almost invariably made their own symbolic and allegorical interpretations. Abai wanted to present Bhagavad Gita as it is. It was to be 1,200 pages, 3 illustrated, beautifully bound volumes. For Abai, the books were already a reality from which he was separated only by time. Over the past 2 years, he had accumulated hundreds of manuscript pages. He wrote in notebooks and on loose papers, and then typed the numbered manuscripts. He could never give the book his full time, but gradually it began to take shape. It began to take shape. Da, 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 da. Krishna. He also preached Lord Chaitanya's message through letters, writing to many leaders in the government, to respectable acquaintances, to people whose articles he had read or whose activities had caught his eye in the newspaper. Presenting himself as a humble servant, he wrote to them of his ideas on how India's original Krishna-conscious culture could be applied as the successful solution to all manners of dilemmas. Sometimes his letters drew replies, and Abai would respond, fanning the sparks of interest wherever he found them. East Bengal. Bangladesh, East Bengal. Yeah. Huh. It borders on India. And Pakistan, evidently. Huh. A well-known reformer, Mahendra Pratap Raj, was forming what he called the World Federation. Abai had read a news sheet which Mr. Pratap had published from Vrindavan, in which he addressed all nations and peoples of the world and called for a unity of mankind. Abai wrote to him suggesting that Lord Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad-Gita provided a theistic science capable of uniting all religions. Mr. Pratap replied in May 1947, quote, I admire your deep study of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. I myself am a great admirer of the great classic. I assure you that I am working strictly according to the book. End quote. Mr. Pratap mentioned his book, Religion of Love, and suggested that Abai read it if he wanted to know the World Federation's view of religion. Quote, in the meanwhile, Mr. Pratap wrote, I do not agree to your suggestion of making the name of Krishna, or Govinda, as the basis of the unity of religions. This would amount to conversion and won't lead to unity of religions. I highly appreciate your efforts in the direction of back to Godhead. End quote. Abai got the book, read it, and in July 1947, while he was visiting Kanpur, wrote a reply. He had traveled to Kanpur not as a spiritual teacher, but as a pharmaceutical salesman. Yet, a typewriter had been available, and out had come his preaching. So he read this man's book, who doesn't think Krishna should be glorified, and that the world should be united in Krishna consciousness. He has some other idea of how it's going to be united. And he's written a book, Religion of Love. Prabhupada read it, and this is what Prabhupada's replying. I can just imagine what Prabhupada found in the book. Okay, here we go. Prabhupada writes, in continuation of my last postcard, I beg to inform you that I have finished the reading of your book, Religion of Love. In my opinion, the whole thesis is based on the philosophy of pantheism, and the approach is made by services of mankind. Pantheism means many gods and serving mankind. Religion of love is the true religious idea, but if the approach is made through the service of mankind only, then the process is made imperfect, partial, and unscientific. The true religion of love is perfectly inculcated in Bhagavad-Gita. Besides, you have not quoted any authority for all your statements. So it is more or less dogmatic. If different men put different dogmatic views about religion and its essentials, who is to be accepted and who is not to be? Therefore, the approach shall be and must be authoritative, scientific, and universal. Okay, so he didn't like the guy's book. Pantheistic, based on doing good works, and dogmatic. Abai then gave a summary of the Bhagavad-Gita in 10 points, concluding, so he trashed the guy, okay, but he didn't leave him broken in that state. He gave him something. See, that's If you defeat someone, you can't just leave them smashed, bleeding, and lying in the road. You have to give them something. The reason you smash them is so that you can give them Krishna. So Abai, after he smashed the guy, gave a summary of Bhagavad-Gita in 10 points, which concluded with, the highest service that can be rendered to mankind is, therefore, to preach the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad-Gita for all time, all places, in all people. That's the highest service you can do for mankind. But extended philosophical dialogue was not usually the result of his letters. So after that, that was it for Mr. Pratap. In 1947, when Abai wrote to high government officers of the newly formed government of India suggesting a remedy for riots, they turned him away. When he asked to talk with the governor of West Bengal, the governor's secretary replied, His Excellency regrets that he is unable to grant you an interview at present, owing to the heavy pressures of work. When he wrote to the assistant secretary to the Minister of Education, an assistant to the assistant secretary replied, The government of India regret that they are unable to accede to your request. Sometimes official interest took the form of a patronizing pat on the head. Quote, I am sure your scheme for establishing peace will meet with response from our Prime Minister. End quote. And another, he, the Minister of Education, is glad to see you are taking to root out communalism. He suggests that you get in touch with somebody else, blah, blah, end quote. A local official asked not to be seen. So this is from some local official. I thank you for all that you have written and the fine sentiments which you have expressed. It is of no use arguing the matter, as I do not think that I can serve any useful purpose by joining the organization which you wish to set up, and therefore you need not take the trouble of seeing me. I wish you, however, all success. In October, after the Calcutta riots of 1947, Abai wrote to the chairman of the Rehabilitation Committee, who replied, Regarding Hari Kirtan and Prasadam, you may make any program of your own, but I am afraid I am not interested in the same, nor my committee, and therefore there is no necessity of your meeting with me. Now, when Prabhupada was in the States in the 70s, and a meeting was arranged with an official in the from the Chicago government, I think it was Chicago, from the police force. And they were having a lot of problem with crime in the city. And the man came, he was very sincere and very nice, and he said, do you have any suggestions that can help us with this? You're a spiritual leader. We're open to suggestions. It's unmanageable, the crime that's going on. And Prabhupada said, yes, give us some facility, a building, some facility, and we will distribute prasadam and the chanting of the holy name, and that will solve your crime problems. And Lieutenant, somebody or other, he said, thank you very much. I'll check with my superiors. We're still waiting. So what did your superiors say? They couldn't do it. But Prabhupada had that same plan, and he did that here in the States also. He approached government officials, give us some facility, we'll solve your crime problems. But I can see here it's difficult because how could government funds and government facilities be given to a particular religious, then all the different religions, we want, so I can understand the difficulties there, even if they wanted to do it. I did get to do it, that's amazing to me now, I think. When I was in Chattanooga, I had a free food program in the government building. They let me use the kitchen. And they even advertised it in their little monthly, what's going on with the recreation and parks. And they called it Vegetarian Plus. The plus was Krishna. I got away with it. Jai! In a small way. The former mayor of the city came and got a bag of cookies. Yeah. The Prabhupada, he made that effort. Just like he's doing here. Abai was fulfilling his role as a Vaishnava preacher, and the secretaries of the various government officers were recognizing and addressing him as such, but they could not appreciate his applications of the philosophy of Bhagavad-Gita and his suggestions for Harinam Kirtan. Occasionally, however, someone seemed interested. Mr. N.P. Astana, High Court Advocate, replied, I am very much obliged to you for your letter regarding your broad scheme about spiritual improvement. I thoroughly appreciate the fine feelings which have prompted you to write this letter and the kindness with which you have considered my query. I have been a student of Bhagavad-Gita and have also imbibed some of its teachings, but I still lack a good deal and will be glad to be guided by a person of your accomplishment. You may kindly, therefore, send your scheme to me, on receipt of which I will be able to express my views. So there was an opening. I wonder what happened with that. It was inevitable that Abai would think of engaging Mahatma Gandhi in devotional service. Because of his lifelong courageous, aesthetic, and moral activities on behalf of his countrymen, Mahatma Gandhi had great power to influence the Indian masses. As with Mahendra Pratap of the World Federation, Mahatma Gandhi's idea of serving God was to try to bring happiness to man through politics and through his own invented methods. As one Englishman had said of Mahatma Gandhi, he is either a saint among the politicians or a politician among the saints. Be that as it may, he was not as yet fully engaged in pure devotional service, and his activities were not those of a Mahatma as described in Bhagavad-Gita. The Gita defines a Mahatma as one who fully engages in worshiping Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, always chanting his glories. The Mahatma encourages others to surrender to Krishna. But because as a young man Abai had been a follower of Gandhi's, Abai had a special feeling for him. Of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had later convinced him to engage exclusively in devotional service. But now Abai felt his old friendship for Gandhi, even though Gandhi was a towering figure of worldwide fame, and Abai was unknown both to Gandhi and to the world. Hare Krishna. So he's going to read this letter. He's going to sign it. That's why the name of the chapter is An Unknown Friend. He's going to sign it An Unknown Friend. No, he doesn't sign it as an unknown friend, but he refers to himself as an unknown friend. So, I think we'll let that go. Got some things to do. Hare Krishna. Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar. Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Whew! Yeah. Krishna! Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master told him he was a fool. You're a fool. Just chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. It can't be that easy.